It was 2 days before I got paid. And all I had for breakfast was a can of beans. I had to ration it, half that morning, half the next. As I sat there trying to convince myself that beans were actually a pretty nutritious breakfast, I thought, I have a college degree and a pretty good job. Why am I eating beans for breakfast? This is the truth about a time in my life I've been a bit embarrassed to share. You know, today I'm a certified spiritual life coach and a meditation instructor who helps women find clarity about whether to stay or leave their marriages. I've been a spiritual practitioner for nearly 30 years and a meditation teacher for 12. But I don't understand this struggle just because of my professional experience. I understand it because I lived through it twice. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share what finally helped me see why I was stuck, how meditation helped me hear my own wisdom, and 3 questions that may help you begin hearing yours. I'm not sharing my story to convince you to leave your marriage. Leaving was the right decision for me. Your answer could be different. A few years after my divorce, I found myself in another difficult relationship. I had already been through one painful marriage, and I couldn't believe I was facing this kind of decision again. Everything looked fine from the outside. I was a mom, I had a good job, I was committed to my meditation practice for about 20 years at that point, and I looked like someone who had it all together. But inside, I was in a relationship that had me questioning myself. I wanted so badly for this relationship to work, and I didn't want to admit that I could have been wrong again. So I stayed stuck in indecision far longer than I want to admit. At that time, I believed it was gender appropriate to let the man handle the money. I thought allowing him to take that role would preserve his sense of manhood and protect his ego. But he didn't manage money very well, and whenever I tried to raise a concern or make a suggestion, voice my opinion, he got angry. So I learned to stay quiet. I told myself that I was being patient and loving, but every time I silenced myself, I trusted myself less. Eventually, I could no longer tell, was I being patient and loving, or was I abandoning myself? Then came that morning with the beans. We were completely broke. Payday was still 2 days away. And the only food I had for breakfast was that can of beans that needed to last me 2 mornings. As I sat there eating that can, something inside me began to wake up. The question wasn't really about the beans. It was about the distance between the life I appeared to have and the life I was actually living. Like I said, I had a college degree. I had a good job. I was responsible and capable. So why had I given away so much of my voice and my power that I was rationing that can of beans for breakfast? That night I sat down for meditation. I had began meditating before the relationship and maintained my practice throughout. As my mind became quieter, I began to see what was actually happening more clearly. I realized he was stuck, but I also saw that he was not willing to do what he could do to become unstuck. There were things he could have done to address his problems, but he wasn't choosing any of them. He didn't want to learn. He didn't want to grow, and he didn't want to change. I had spent so much energy trying to love him, encourage him, protect him, wait for him, but I couldn't want it more than he did. And as long as I tied my future to the hope that he would eventually change, I was stuck too. Then I saw something else. I had so much more to offer. I had gifts that needed to be shared with the world. But as long as I stayed in that relationship, I was pouring these gifts into one person who didn't even appreciate them. And there was less and less of me to live my purpose, for my spiritual growth, and the life I knew I was capable of living. That was when I decided to leave. And I want to pause here because clarity led me to leave. That doesn't mean clarity is going to make you leave. It may lead you to have an honest conversation. It may lead you to set a boundary. It may lead you to ask for meaningful change and watch what happens next. It may lead you to stay with a clearer understanding of what you're choosing. The purpose of clarity isn't to make a decision someone else thinks you should make. It's to see your reality clearly enough to make a decision that honors your spiritual values and your own well-being. And clarity didn't mean I was never felt afraid again or questioned myself again. And it didn't make leaving easy. It didn't remove the grief or guarantee that I would know exactly what my future would look like. It meant that I could finally see what was true and trust myself enough to respond to it. So if you're still struggling with this decision, I'm going to give you 3 questions I want you to consider. The first question, what have I learned to stay quiet about in order to keep the peace? This isn't about forcing yourself to confront your partner tomorrow. Begin by noticing what you've stopped admitting to yourself. What opinions do you swallow? What concerns do you minimize? And what have you convinced yourself does not matter because acknowledging it might create conflict? The second question, am I making my decision based on my partner's potential, promises, or repeated choices? Someone's potential may keep you hopeful for a long time. But potential is not the same as willingness, and promises are not the same as patterns. Look compassionately and honestly at what your partner repeatedly chooses, not what you hope that they'll choose someday. The third question, what is this pattern costing me, and what am I becoming while I wait? The cost might be financial, but it also might be costing you your voice, your health, your sense of purpose, or your ability to trust yourself. The question is not only, do I love him? You may love him deeply. The question is also, what is happening to me inside this pattern? These questions may bring up fear, so don't force yourself to answer them all at once. Place both your feet on the floor. Take a slow, deep breath and allow your shoulders to relax. And bring your attention back to the present moment. Calming your body will not make this decision for you, but it can lower the volume of the fear long enough for you to hear that quieter voice of your own wisdom. Then ask yourself, what do I know before fear, guilt, or someone else's expectations tell me what I know? Real clarity requires courage. It requires honesty. It requires willingness to show up for the inner work. But you don't have to do that alone. If you are tired of carrying the question, should I stay or leave my marriage, by yourself? If you're ready for someone to stand with you while you make sense of what's been happening, and if you want support while you're being pressured to stay or leave, I'm opening 10 30-minute Sacred Clarity calls this week. This call is going to focus entirely on you and what's been keeping you stuck. There's no pressure. It's simply a real conversation with someone who cares and understands how difficult this decision may be. We'll identify one practical step that you can begin taking to move towards clarity. And I won't invite you to work with me unless I genuinely believe I can help and we both feel it's a good fit. You can use the link in the description below to request your free Sacred Clarity call. Whatever decision you eventually make shouldn't be based on fear, guilt, or someone else's expectations. It should be a decision that honors and values what you know and the life you're here to live. Until next time, take care of yourself, okay?